He led America through its darkest hours, the Great Depression and World War II, a towering figure of resilience who projected strength even from a wheelchair. Franklin Delano Roosevelt commanded the world stage. But the untold story is the immense, often tumultuous, and deeply complex world his 6 children navigated, a world defined by suffocating privilege, crushing expectations, parental absence, fierce rivalries, and the constant, inescapable weight of the Roosevelt name. What truly became of the heirs to America's greatest political dynasty, the 5 sons and 1 daughter who lived, loved, fought, and stumbled under the colossal shadow of FDR? Welcome. You clicked on this video because you know the president who reshaped America. But you sense the real human epic lies within the family that lived through those extraordinary times. In this exhaustive, deeply researched documentary, we will tell the complete multi-generational and largely untold story of all 6 of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt's children. We will explore the unique path of their only daughter, Anna, who became her father's confidant. We will delve into the ambitious and often controversial careers of the 4 surviving sons, the decorated Marine and politician James, the restless Maverick Elliot, the charismatic namesake Franklin Jr., and the quiet businessman John. We will also respectfully acknowledge the brief life and lasting impact of the infant son they lost, whose death profoundly shaped the family dynamic. To bring you this incredible, sprawling family saga, we have gone far beyond the presidential histories and the familiar narratives of FDR and Eleanor. We have meticulously researched the children's own memoirs and biographies, analyzed decades of personal letters, news archives, military records, and political histories to piece together their individual journeys. This is not just a superficial "where are they now?" It is a deep, unflinching exploration of the profound burdens and unique opportunities of growing up Roosevelt during the most pivotal decades of the 20th century. It's a story about ambition, sibling rivalry, public service, personal demons, navigating the complex relationship between 2 monumental parents and the 6 individuals who inherited one of the most powerful and demanding legacies in American history. Prepare to understand the full, complex, and deeply human story behind the Roosevelt heirs. Number 6. The Daughter Confidant, Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. The story of the Roosevelt children begins with the eldest, the only daughter born into the heart of New York's political aristocracy. She would navigate a complex relationship with her famous, often distant mother, but forge an exceptionally close, almost surrogate spouse bond with her legendary father, becoming his eyes and ears within the White House during his most critical years. Born on May 3, 1906 in New York City, Anna Eleanor Roosevelt was the first child and only daughter of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. Her arrival came as her father was just beginning his political career, serving in the New York State Senate. Her mother, Eleanor, intensely shy and still finding her own footing under the watchful eye of her formidable mother-in-law, Sarah Delano Roosevelt, reportedly struggled with early motherhood, feeling inadequate and overwhelmed. Anna grew up in the privileged world of the New York Roosevelts, and Delano's summers spent at Campobello Island, education at private schools like Miss Chapin's School, surrounded by political discourse and the societal expectations placed upon young women of her class. Her relationship with her parents was complex from the start. She often felt overshadowed by her imposing grandmother, Sarah, who doted on Franklin and frequently interfered in the raising of the children, creating tension within the household. Anna's bond with her mother, Eleanor, was often strained. Eleanor, consumed by her own insecurities, and later her burgeoning public life, advocating for social causes, could seem emotionally distant or overly critical. Conversely, Anna developed an exceptionally close relationship with her father, FDR. This bond intensified dramatically after his devastating polio diagnosis in 1921, when Anna was 15. As FDR fought to rebuild his life and political career from his wheelchair, Anna became a source of comfort, support, and companionship, a role perhaps magnified by the well-documented strains in her parents' marriage. Particularly, Eleanor's discovery of Franklin's affair with Lucy Mercer around 1918, which fundamentally altered their relationship. Anna married her first husband, stockbroker Curtis Bean Dahl, in 1926, and they had 2 children, Anna Eleanor Sisty and Curtis Buzzy. These grandchildren became beloved figures, often photographed playing in the White House during FDR's presidency, providing moments of normalcy and joy. However, the marriage ended in divorce in 1934 amidst the pressures of the Depression and perhaps differing expectations. In 1935, she married her second husband, journalist John Boettiger. Together, they moved to Seattle, where Boettiger became publisher of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, a paper owned by William Randolph Hearst, a powerful and often vocal political opponent of FDR's. Anna worked alongside him as editor of the Women's Page, gaining experience in journalism and public relations and navigating the complex political tightrope of working for her father's critic. They had one son, John Roosevelt Boettiger. Anna's most significant public role came during World War II. In 1944, with her second marriage failing and seeking a new purpose, she moved into the White House to serve as her father's unofficial personal assistant and confidant. With Eleanor often traveling extensively for her own war-related work, visiting troops, advocating for various causes, Anna effectively filled a crucial gap. She managed FDR's schedule, acted as a gatekeeper, filtering access to the increasingly frail president, read him newspapers, managed correspondence, and provided essential emotional support during the incredibly stressful final years of the war and his declining health. She accompanied him to the pivotal Yalta Conference in February 1945, serving as his eyes and ears, and reportedly playing a role in managing the complex dynamics between FDR, Churchill, and Stalin. Her presence in the White House was not without controversy. Her influence, her role as gatekeeper, and her sometimes tense relationship with her mother were subjects of internal White House gossip and later historical analysis. She was fiercely protective of her father, sometimes clashing with Eleanor or other administration figures like Harry Hopkins. It was Anna, not Eleanor, who was with FDR at Warm Springs, Georgia, when he suffered his fatal cerebral hemorrhage in April 1945. And it was Anna who reportedly orchestrated the presence of Lucy Mercer Rutherford, FDR's former mistress, now widowed at the time of his death. A fact that deeply wounded Eleanor when she discovered it shortly after arriving. After her father's death, Anna's life continued to be marked by change. Her marriage to John Boettiger ended in divorce in 1949. He tragically died by suicide the following year. In 1952, she married her third husband, Dr. James Addison Halstead, a physician involved in Veterans Administration work. She continued to work in public relations journalism and later became involved in advocating for education and human relations, echoing some of her mother's concerns. She co-edited volumes of her mother's autobiography and wrote several children's books. She also maintained a complex, though ultimately reconciled, relationship with Eleanor until her mother's death in 1962. Anna Roosevelt Halstead lived a long life, passing away on December 1, 1975, at the age of 69. Her scandals were primarily the complexities of her relationships. Her divorces, her sometimes difficult bond with Eleanor, her controversial role in FDR's final months. The untold story of Anna Roosevelt is the story of the daughter who stepped into the void, becoming the indispensable support system for one of the world's most powerful men during his greatest trials. She navigated the immense pressures of being the first daughter, carving out her own roles as a writer-editor and political facilitator, forever defined by her intense, complex, and ultimately loving connection to her legendary father. Anna found her place beside her father in the White House, acting as his confidant. But the first son, bearing the weight of expectation, would seek to emulate his father's political path, embarking on a life of military heroism, political ambition, and constant, often bruising public scrutiny. Number 5. The ambitious son, the Marine hero, James Roosevelt II. Next came the eldest son, the one who seemed to inherit his father's boundless energy and political charm. He would follow FDR's path to Harvard, serve with extraordinary bravery in World War II, and win election to Congress. But his life would also be a relentless roller coaster of ambition, controversy, failed campaigns, multiple marriages, and the constant, inescapable burden of being Franklin Roosevelt's son. Born on December 23, 1907, James Roosevelt II was the second child and eldest son of Franklin and Eleanor. Named after FDR's father, he grew up acutely aware of his position as the potential heir to a burgeoning political dynasty. Like his father, he attended the elite Groton School and Harvard University. Tall, handsome, and possessing his father's famous charisma, Jimmy Sour, as he was often called, seemed destined for a life in the public eye. His early career involved various business ventures, often leveraging his family connections, including working in the insurance industry. He became involved in his father's political campaigns, gaining valuable experience. When FDR became president in 1933, James initially continued his business pursuits, but soon joined his father's administration. He served as a secretary to the president from 1937 to 1938, a role that placed him at the heart of power, but also drew criticism of nepotism and accusations, which he denied of using his influence for personal gain, particularly regarding insurance deals involving government contacts. He resigned amidst controversy and briefly worked in the film industry with Samuel Goldwyn. With the outbreak of World War II, James, despite potential deferments, immediately sought active military service, joining the Marine Corps. His wartime record was marked by exceptional bravery. He served as second-in-command of the 2nd Raider Battalion, an elite commando unit led by the legendary Evans Carlson during the perilous Makin Island raid in August 1942. Despite heavy fire and chaotic conditions during the risky amphibious landing and subsequent withdrawal, he distinguished himself, earning the Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor, for extraordinary heroism. He later earned the Silver Star for gallantry during fighting on Guadalcanal. He rose to the rank of Brigadier General in the Marine Corps Reserve. His combat heroism was undeniable, a clear embodiment of the courage expected of a Roosevelt, silencing many critics who had questioned his earlier White House role. After the war, James returned to California and finally embarked on his own political career. He became active in the Democratic Party, serving as chairman of the California State Democratic Central Committee. In 1954, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, representing California's 26th Congressional District, covering parts of Los Angeles. He served 6 terms in Congress, 1955 to 1965, generally aligning with the liberal wing of the party, advocating for civil rights social programs, and opposing the House Un-American Activities Committee, echoing his parents' ideals. However, James's ambition often seemed to outstrip his political grasp. He made several unsuccessful bids for higher office, including runs for mayor of Los Angeles in 1965, losing to Sam Yorty, and an ill-fated primary challenge against Pat Brown for governor of California earlier. His political career was also frequently overshadowed by his tumultuous personal life and controversial business dealings. James Roosevelt was married 4 times and faced several messy, highly publicized divorces that generated negative headlines and likely damaged his political prospects. His business ventures after leaving Congress were sometimes controversial, leading to financial difficulties and accusations of trading on his famous name. He also battled health problems later in life, including complications from his wartime service. Despite these struggles, James remained a prominent public figure. He served as a delegate to the United Nations Economic and Social Council under President Lyndon B. Johnson. He wrote several books, including Affectionately FDR, A Son's Story of a Lonely Man, co-authored with Sidney Chalette, which offered a complex and sometimes critical portrait of his father, focusing on his personal life and loneliness. Later, he penned My Parents, A Differing View, which provided his perspective on the Roosevelt marriage and legacy, sometimes challenging aspects of his mother's or siblings' accounts. James Roosevelt passed away on August 13, 1991, at the age of 83. His scandals were numerous. The early White House controversies, the failed political campaigns, overshadowed by personal issues, the messy divorces, the questionable business deals. The untold story of James Roosevelt is the relentless, often fraught struggle of the eldest son trying to live up to an impossible legacy. He possessed immense charisma, undeniable courage, and genuine political convictions, yet his achievements were constantly measured against his father's, and his personal life often undermined his public ambitions. He was the son who most closely followed FDR's path, but found the shadow too vast, the expectations too heavy to fully escape or replicate the magic of the Roosevelt name. James Roosevelt's life was a public roller coaster of heroism and controversy. But the next child born to Franklin and Eleanor would experience only the briefest flicker of existence, his death leaving a hidden scar on the family narrative. Number 4. The infant son, the hidden grief. Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. Between the boisterous arrival of the first son and the later emergence of the more rebellious children, there was a pause, a moment of joy quickly extinguished. the first child to bear the father's full name. His life was tragically short, a hidden grief that profoundly impacted his mother and cast a subtle, often overlooked shadow on the family's story. Born on March 18, 1909, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. was the third child and second son of Franklin and Eleanor. His birth came during FDR's time in the New York State Senate, a period of growing political influence. Naming him directly after his father signified the hope and ambition invested in this new son, perhaps envisioned as the true heir. However, tragedy struck swiftly. Just 7 months later, on November 1, 1909, the infant Franklin Jr. died. The cause of death was attributed to influenza, possibly complicated by an undiagnosed heart condition. In an era before widespread vaccination and effective treatments for infectious diseases, infant and child mortality rates were heartbreakingly high, even among privileged families like the Roosevelts. Sicknesses that are minor today could quickly become fatal, devastating families, rich and poor alike. The impact of this loss, particularly on Eleanor Roosevelt, was profound. Already struggling with her own insecurities, the pressures of her role within the demanding Roosevelt clan, especially under the thumb of her mother-in-law, Sarah, and perhaps feeling inadequate as a mother, the death of her infant son plunged her into a deep depression. Biographers note that this period marked a significant turning point for Eleanor. The intense private grief, perhaps coupled with her dissatisfaction in her marriage and role, seemed to galvanize her later focus on social causes and her deep empathy for those suffering loss or injustice. Some suggest that the inability to fully express or process this grief within the stoic Roosevelt family structure contributed to her lifelong search for emotional connection and purpose outside the traditional domestic sphere. It was a catalyst for her transformation. For FDR, the loss was also significant, though his public persona, and perhaps his upbringing, demanded stoicism. He threw himself back into his political work. The impact on their marriage, already complex, is harder to gauge. But such a shared tragedy inevitably alters the dynamic between parents. The brief life and sudden death of the first Franklin Jr. became a quiet, unmentioned sorrow, a hidden wound beneath the surface of their increasingly public lives. The scandal here is the tragedy itself, and perhaps the societal norms of the time that often discouraged open grieving, especially for men. The untold story is the significant yet often overlooked impact this infant death had on shaping Eleanor Roosevelt's emotional landscape, and perhaps indirectly her later path as a world-renowned humanitarian. He is the forgotten child, the namesake, whose brief existence serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the hidden sorrows that often lie beneath the surface of even the most powerful families. His death also paved the way, 5 years later, for another son to receive the same powerful name. The grief for the lost infant became part of the family's hidden history. The next son to arrive would be anything but hidden. He would become the most controversial, the most restless, the Maverick who defied convention and often clashed with the carefully managed Roosevelt image. Number 3. The Maverick son, the restless spirit, Elliott Roosevelt. While his siblings largely followed paths of politics, military service, or quiet professionalism, the third surviving child chose a different route entirely. He was the family maverick, the restless spirit who chased adventure, courted controversy, married 5 times, and wasn't afraid to challenge or even exploit the family legacy on his own terms. Born on September 23, 1910, Elliott Roosevelt was the second surviving son. Perhaps reacting against the academic path of his older brothers, or simply possessing a different temperament, Elliott showed less interest in formal education. He briefly attended Groton, but did not go on to Harvard. He was drawn to more adventurous and entrepreneurial pursuits from a young age. His spirit was restless, his ambitions varied and often shifting. He seemed eager to escape the confines of the traditional Roosevelt path. His early career involved ventures in advertising and radio broadcasting. He developed a passion for aviation, becoming an accomplished pilot, a skill that would prove crucial during World War II. When the war broke out, Elliott, despite initially lacking a college degree or traditional officer training, secured a commission in the Army Air Forces, leveraging his flight experience and undoubtedly his father's influence as commander-in-chief. His wartime service was extensive and distinguished, though sometimes controversial. He flew numerous reportedly over 300 combat and reconnaissance missions in North Africa and Europe, rising rapidly through the ranks to brigadier general. He commanded reconnaissance wings and earned decorations, including the Distinguished Flying Cross. However, his service was also marked by accusations of favoritism and incidents like a highly criticized trip where his bull mastiff dog Blaze was allegedly bumped off a military transport flight to make room, causing a minor political scandal back home. He served as a military aide to his father at significant wartime conferences like Casablanca and Tehran, giving him a unique insider's view of high-level strategy and interactions between Allied leaders. After the war, Elliot's life remained varied and often tumultuous. He purchased a ranch in Texas, embracing the life of a gentleman rancher for a time. He continued his involvement in various business ventures, some successful, others less so, and occasionally attracting controversy. He faced scrutiny for his business dealings, including accepting a loan from Howard Hughes while his father was president, which later became the subject of Senate investigations, raising questions about influence peddling. Elliot was married 5 times. His numerous divorces, often generating headlines and contributing to his reputation as the family's black sheep. His wives included Elizabeth Browning Donner of the Donner P&G family, actress Ruth Guggen's actress Faye Emerson, a particularly high-profile and stormy marriage, Minnie Wabell Ross, and finally, Patricia Peabody Whitehead. These relationships produced 4 children. Perhaps most controversially, Elliot became a prolific author in his later years. He penned a successful series of mystery novels featuring his mother, Eleanor Roosevelt, as an amateur detective. While popular, these books were seen by some as a somewhat kitschy capitalization on his mother's image. Far more contentious were the biographical works he wrote or edited about his parents. Particularly An Untold Story, The Roosevelts of Hyde Park, 1973, and A Rendezvous with Destiny, The Roosevelts of the White House, 1975. These books contained intimate, sometimes critical, and occasionally sensational details about his parents' marriage, including FDR's affairs and Eleanor's complex relationships. FDR's health issues, which the administration had carefully downplayed, and White House dynamics. While providing valuable, if subjective, insights, they were fiercely criticized by historians and some family members, including his brother James, for perceived inaccuracies, breaches of privacy, and a self-serving perspective. He seemed determined to tell his version of the story, regardless of how it clashed with the established narrative or family loyalties. Elliott Roosevelt passed away on October 27, 1990, at the age of 80. His scandals were numerous. The wartime controversies, the multiple divorces, the questionable business deals, the contentious books. The untold story of Elliott Roosevelt is that of the ultimate nonconformist, within a family defined by duty and public image. He was the son who refused to fit the mold, who chased his own restless ambitions across diverse fields, from the sky to the ranch to the writer's desk. He embraced the privileges of his name, but chafed against its constraints, living a life marked by adventure, opportunism, and a defiant insistence on speaking his own, often controversial truth. Elliot carved his own path, often courting controversy. The next son, however, would seem to embody the family's political inheritance most directly, bearing the father's name and charismatic torch into a new generation of public service. Number 2. The Namesake 2. The political charmer, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr., II. 5 years after the tragic death of the first son to bear the name, another Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. was born. Handsome, charming, and ambitious, he seemed destined to follow his father's path, inheriting the political magic. He would serve heroically in war-win election to Congress and aim for higher office, yet find that replicating the Roosevelt phenomenon was an elusive, perhaps impossible goal. Born on August 17, 1914, Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. arrived into a family still deeply involved in New York politics, with his father serving as Assistant Secretary of the Navy during World War I. Named in memory of the infant brother who had died 5 years earlier, he carried the full weight and expectation of his father's name from birth. Like his father and older brothers, he received an elite education at Groton School and Harvard University. He possessed a natural charisma and striking physical resemblance to FDR, qualities that seemed to mark him for a political future. He went on to earn his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School in 1940. Like his brothers, Franklin Jr.'s early career was interrupted by World War II. He served with distinction in the United States Navy, primarily on destroyers in the Atlantic and Mediterranean theaters. He participated in numerous engagements, including the naval Battle of Casablanca, and rose to the rank of lieutenant commander, receiving the Silver Star Bronze Star with Combat 5 and the Purple Heart for wounds received in action. His wartime heroism added another layer to the family's legacy of service, proving his own courage under fire. After the war, Franklin Jr. entered the political arena, seemingly fulfilling his destiny. In 1949, running as a candidate of the Liberal Party, though also endorsed by Democrats, he won a special election to the U.S. House of Representatives, representing a district on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, part of the area his father had once represented. He served 3 terms in Congress, 1949 to 1955, establishing himself as a charismatic liberal voice, often advocating for policies aligned with his father's New Deal and his mother's social justice concerns. He was seen as a rising star within the party. His ambition, however, reached higher. He sought the Democratic nomination for governor of New York in 1954, but lost in a contentious primary to Averell Harriman, who had the backing of the powerful Tammany Hall machine. He later ran for Attorney General of New York in 1966, but was again unsuccessful. Despite his name recognition and charm, he struggled to translate the Roosevelt magic into higher statewide office. Perhaps hampered by factional party politics or the difficulty of escaping his father's shadow and forging his own independent political identity. Beyond elective office, Franklin Jr. held several significant appointed positions. He served as Undersecretary of Commerce under President John F. Kennedy, a close family friend from 1963 to 1965. Following JFK's assassination, President Lyndon B. Johnson appointed him as the first chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EOC, in 1965, placing him at the forefront of implementing the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. He played a key role in the early, often difficult work of combating workplace discrimination. His post-political career involved practicing law and engaging in various international business ventures, including importing foreign cars like Fiat and Jaguar. Like his brother Elliot, his business dealings sometimes attracted scrutiny, though generally less controversy. Franklin Jr.'s personal life was also marked by multiple marriages and divorces, mirroring the pattern seen with several of his siblings. He was married 5 times, most notably his first marriage to Ethel DuPont, heiress to the DuPont chemical fortune, a union merging 2 American dynasties that ultimately ended in divorce. His subsequent marriages also faced difficulties, contributing to a perception of personal instability that perhaps hindered his political aspirations. Franklin Delano Roosevelt Jr. passed away on his 74th birthday, August 17, 1988, from lung cancer. His scandals were primarily related to his unsuccessful political campaigns, occasional business controversies, and his multiple divorces. The untold story of FDR Jr. is that of the son who seemed most poised to inherit the political mantle, possessing the name, the looks, and the charisma, yet ultimately falling short of the highest levels of power. He served honorably in war and government, championing liberal causes, but found that being a Roosevelt in the post-FDR era was both a tremendous asset and an inescapable burden. He was the charismatic echo, a significant figure in his own right, but forever destined to be compared to the original. Franklin Jr. chased the political dream, finding both success and limitation. But the final Roosevelt son, the youngest of the clan, would deliberately turn away from the political arena, choosing instead the world of business and embracing a different party affiliation, marking a quiet but definitive break from the family's dominant tradition. Number 1. The Republican son, the quiet businessman, John Aspinwall Roosevelt II, and finally the youngest son, the baby of the family, born just as America was entering World War I. He would grow up witnessing his father's paralysis, his political resurrection, and his presidency. But unlike his brothers who chased political office or high adventure, his path would lead him to the button-down world of corporate America, and perhaps most surprisingly, to the opposite side of the political aisle. Born on March 13, 1916, John Aspinwall Roosevelt II was the 6th and final child of Franklin and Eleanor. He was significantly younger than his older siblings, creating a slight generational gap. He was only 5 years old when his father contracted polio, and his childhood unfolded against the backdrop of FDR's determined rehabilitation and subsequent return to politics, culminating in the governorship of New York and then the presidency when John was a teenager. He spent his high school and college years as the president's son, experiencing the White House during its most dramatic and consequential period. Like his brothers, John attended Groton and Harvard. However, his personality was reportedly different. Quieter, more reserved, less overtly ambitious for the spotlight than James Elliott or Franklin Jr. While his brothers served heroically in combat roles during World War II. John served as a lieutenant commander in the Navy Supply Corps, primarily in the Pacific Theater, earning a Bronze Star for his logistical work. A vital, but less glamorous form of service, perhaps reflecting his more practical, business-oriented mindset. After the war, John made a deliberate choice to distinguish himself from his family's dominant political and social trajectory. He entered the world of business, but unlike Elliott's more speculative ventures, John pursued a more traditional corporate path. In a move designed to prove he could succeed without relying on his name, he famously started at the bottom, working his way up through the ranks at the Filene's department store in Boston, eventually becoming a vice president. He later transitioned into investment banking, joining the prestigious firm of Bache & Company, where he built a successful career in finance. Perhaps his most surprising divergence was political. While his father was the architect of the modern Democratic Party and his mother its liberal conscience, John became a Republican. In 1952, he actively supported Dwight D. Eisenhower for president over the Democratic candidate Adlai Stevenson, a move that undoubtedly caused ripples within the fiercely Democratic Roosevelt clan. He remained involved in Republican politics, supporting figures like Richard Nixon and Nelson Rockefeller. He served on various corporate boards and was involved in philanthropic activities, often related to healthcare and education. John Roosevelt's personal life was also markedly different from several of his brothers. His first marriage to Anne Lindsay Clark in 1938 lasted nearly 3 decades and produced 4 children. While they eventually divorced in 1965, his marital history lacked the serial nature and public drama associated with James or Elliot. He remarried later in life. John Aspinwall Roosevelt II passed away on April 27, 1981, at the age of 65. His scandal was non-existent. The untold story of John Roosevelt is his quiet but definitive declaration of independence. He was the son who chose a different path. Business over politics, Republican over Democrat, relative privacy over public life. He demonstrated that inheriting the Roosevelt name did not dictate a specific destiny. He built a successful career and a stable family life, largely on his own terms, proving that one could honor the family legacy of hard work and achievement without replicating his father's specific choices or political affiliations. He is the quiet counterpoint, the son who found his own way by deliberately stepping outside the expected Roosevelt mold. The 6 lives branching from Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt tell an extraordinary American saga, a story of immense privilege and crushing pressure, public service, and private struggle, loyalty, and rebellion, all lived under the shadow of the Great Depression, World War II, and the weight of a dynastic name. Their complex journeys highlight the enduring challenges faced by children of world historical figures. This theme resonates powerfully with the story of another family defined by presidential power, charisma, and ultimately tragedy. That family was, of course, the Kennedys. On this channel previously, we explored the fascinating and often heartbreaking story of John F. Kennedy's children. Did you know that behind the Camelot myth lies a tale of unimaginable loss, intense public scrutiny, and the divergent paths of America's Prince John Jr., whose life ended in tragic echo, and his sister Caroline, the quiet survivor who became the sole guardian of the flame? The full tragic and glamorous story of the Kennedy children is one you will not want to miss. Click the video on your screen right now to uncover that incredible, untold story. And as always, thank you for watching.